Welcome back everybody, and thank you for joining me again on another vlog. I've just stopped here because I've got what I think is my first composition of the day. You'll notice just in front of me, or just behind me here, there's an area of grass which has been trodden and worn down, and basically because it's been exposed to the elements, rainwater, people's feet, the feet of ponies walking through here have caused this little area of grassland to be eroded in one or two spots. And what we've got here is this little path that runs up towards a composition that I quite like, and you'll see these couple of silver birch trees behind me that I wanted to try and capture a shot of, and I quite like the way that path runs up the side of the right hand side of the image and leads your eye towards those two trees. I've taken it at the moment with a wide angle lens shooting at about 17mm f4, and it looks an interesting shot. There's a little bit of colour in the sky as well, which I quite like. Even though it's very bright and sunny today, I think we're just about capturing that colour quite nicely. So I like this shot. I hope you like it. I think as I look at it as well though, there may also be a tighter crop on this one as well, where I can get the 70 to 300mm lens out and zoom in a little bit closer to those two silver birch trees and just capture a shot of those, the trunks of those two trees on their own. So I'm going to try that one out as well. So I'm just walking around this little area that I'm in, and I found another composition. The sun is in and out, as you can see, and we're getting quite a little bit of brightness in some of the images that I'm seeing, and they're just not really working properly. But this image is quite an interesting one because you can see here these couple of silver birch trees here, and you've got kind of a little gap in between them, and then there's another tree just behind them which is darker. And it looks quite an interesting contrast against the very bright white of those silver birch trees with that slightly darker trunk behind them. I quite like it. I think it's going to be a portrait orientation. I'm going to have to get in quite close as well, so I just get a decent crop of kind of around this area here, just the trunks on their own, the tree trunks on their own. I don't want any of the foliage or the leaves all around it because they're kind of ruining the image because it makes it very, very busy. So I hope you like this shot as well. So that photo will need a little bit of cropping. What you've seen already is not exactly what I've shot. I chose to shoot that in a portrait orientation, but every time I shoot with this camera, I've got the camera set up in a 4:3 crop ratio, but I know that I'm always going to crop the image to a 4:5. Now what that means is that I've always got a little bit of extra space at the edges of the image that I can mess around with, and I know that if my image file is slightly bigger than it needs to be, then when I crop it down it's going to be perfect. It means that I can always get everything I need to get into the image, and I also don't need to worry too much about the edges of the image, because I know that some of that is going to be cropped out. What a lot of photographers and a lot of YouTubers will tell you to do is to keep an eye on the edges of your frame, just for that reason, to make sure that you don't have to get anything unwanted into the frame of the image. But in my case, I don't mind if something crops in just to the very edge of the image, creeps into the very edge of the image, because I know that's probably going to be cropped out anyway at the end of the process, and I know for certain then that I'll get everything I need in the image, like I said. I'm going to move on and see if I can find another shot now. This is a classic woodland scene. Got a little bit of a path here running through with some trees either side of the path. I'm just about 20 or 30 yards away from the original path that I was on, and I managed to kind of creep into this little bit of woodland here. And I'm looking along this path and I can see these trees, and I think there's a composition here that looks quite nice with the path running through the middle of it and the trees either side of it. So hopefully this works. The only issue I've got is that just at the back of the scene, a little way back here, there is a car park, and there's a bright red car in the car park that I can see through the trees as I'm trying to take the shot. So I'm going to have to work the composition a little bit here and see what I can work out and see what I can make with it. But I think this will be quite a nice shot as well. So I'm going to set up and take this shot. So I realised with that scene that dropping the tripod down to about waist level, so it was quite low, lower than normal, that it would kind of enhance the composition and the S-curve of that little bit of path that was running through the scene. But it would also remove that car from the scene as well. So it was quite an interesting little shot. I think it's worked, and I quite like it. I hope you like it. I hope it has worked. I'm going to go and see if I can find one last shot for the day now as well. So this is a really interesting one. In my last vlog, I don't know if you've seen that, guys, but I kind of walked into a clearing which was a little bit similar to this in the middle of the woodland, and found a series of trees that were all quite close together and made quite an interesting panorama. Well, this scene here behind me does exactly the same thing again. So I thought I would have to come in and try and capture a panorama of this scene here. And as you can see, all these trees behind me, compared to the last vlog, these trees here are all quite a bit tighter together, as you can see. So you end up with a much tighter crop on these trees. So the panorama is going to be interesting here. But I quite like all these logs dotted around on the ground in front of the trees, but I also like the fact that this tree here in the middle of the scene is all cracked and gnarly, and you've got holes in it and you can see through it and everything's going on with it. The only issue I've got here is there does seem to be quite a busy pathway coming through this bit of woodland. So whilst I'm taking a panorama, I could easily encounter people walking through the scene as I'm trying to capture the shot. So the idea is to try and be as quick as possible here, make the panorama, and then move on. Well, I hope that was worth the effort that it eventually took for me to get that image. I ended up getting out every single lens that I've got. The 17 to 40mm lens just wasn't working at 40mm. It wasn't a tight enough crop, I found. So I got the 70 to 300mm lens out, and at 70mm that was too tight, which meant there was only really one thing left to try, 50mm. So I've got the 50mm out, set up the shot, f16, so I've got quite a lot of that in focus, and I've been able to focus just on one point manually, and then as I pan the camera across, then hopefully most of the image will stay in focus anyway. So that should have done the trick, he says. It was shot at half a second, ISO 100, because that seemed to be perfect for the lighting that we've got in this quite dark bit of woodland that we're in at the moment. And that's the last image of the day. Hope you've enjoyed the vlog. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and also please remember to subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you again on another vlog very soon. Bye for now.